right. Well, everyone, I will be talking about, as you can see on your screen right now, the e-commerce hangover, which we'll talk about briefly after I just show you that I'm the executive director. As it says, the Reverse Logistics Association is an easy to join global community at rla.org, and our focus are the members. In a nutshell, the industry consists of the retailers and manufacturers who make stuff and sell stuff and get stuff back. And then the rest of the universe are all of the third party service providers, we call them, or third party solutions partners who come up with ways to reduce returns, process them faster, and collect higher asset recovery. That's the basic world of returns. The ecosystem here, as we describe it, and we show it on the website, consists of the beginning, the initializing where the return starts. Now, we've done this a lot of ways. You used to just take it into a store, you take it to the clerk at the counter, they ask you a couple of questions, and you get your money credited. Nowadays, the process is becomes simplified and more technology driven, where you bought something online, they have your record, you simply go on, click a button, and say you want to return it, and there's many options available by UPS stores, by FedEx stores, by DHL stores, by dropping it off at the retailer, dropping it off at an alternate retailer. There's many silver bullets in the taking care of the customer industry. But after the product is taken back, that's where the work begins. Dispositioning is a decision tree. What do we do with it? Can we resell it as new? Do we have to liquidate it? Can we repair it, refurbish it, repackage it? All of the circles around the circular economy are an indication of what can happen with returns. The last couple of things, of course, is can we reuse it still somehow? But if not, do we recycle it? So that's the ecosystem of reverse logistics. And basically, in the business world, in most P&Ls of most companies, everything that happens after the sale is an aspect of reverse logistics, which includes a lot more touch points and a lot more costs. So if you make it easy for people to shop online, we've learned that they do. Online increase in e-commerce business has been more than double in the last 3 years for many reasons, including the fact that we're stuck at home. But we're buying online and we're shopping online, and it's a different kind of an experience. So the returns are at least 3 to 4 times the average rate of actual store rates. So if you bought something at a Zara or an H&M or other department stores, you would normally take those things back. But now you make it so easy for them to shop online and return it, they do. The return rates are pretty dramatic. The electronics of the world, maybe only 10% online purchases go back. People do a little more research when they're looking for electronics. Homeware, also around 10%. But now we get into the heavy categories. Imagine ordering furniture online, couches, chairs. You don't know how it's going to fit or feel in your room until you actually get it. So the return rates there have gone up quite a bit, 15% and higher. These rates are a bit old. We know that everything's gone up. Health and beauty aids. Imagine the idea of buying lipstick online, and you buy it, you get it home, you put it on your lips, and it doesn't look right. And that's what happens a lot to people. So health and beauty, sports and travel, of course, there people buy fitness equipment after the first of the year. They use it a couple months. They're not using it enough. They send it back. The real nightmare, of course, is fashion. The fashion industry is experiencing dramatic return rates because of a number of things that we'll talk about on the next few pages. Again, 25% returns for clothing is really huge numbers to deal with when the stores themselves were only getting 5 to 10% because you tried it on. But here's some other important information into the research about what are consumers doing, because the returns cost now, and when I was at Philips, the returns cost was just one little piece of the pie. Now companies are recognizing that the costs include shipping, preparing time, administration of it, and remarketing. That's all eroding the margins. And now we have research where shoppers, like 19% of them or more, admit to ordering multiple items, multiples of the same item, so they can decide at home which color looks better, which fits in their hand better, which is sized better. So 30% of the shoppers actually overpurchase because they're expecting to return the unwanted items. Why? Because the online retailers say, we'll make it easy for you to return and to buy. So, in addition, because of that, you've got retailers now recognizing prices have to increase to counter these rising return volumes, as it says. And then they also recognize, the retailers are recognizing that the managing the returns process is expensive and it's impacting their profits, which is why many retailers are looking for many new solutions. So let's talk about, what does it look like? You'll see these pictures here. The one on the left is the back room of a typical retailer. Well, not typical. Let's call it a large scale retailer. And you see how those products are just thrown into boxes, shrink wrapped, and sent somewhere. The people doing this that are actually working these products, they don't really think past the fact that this is something I have to get rid of. I look at those packages and say, those are unhappy customers. Those are customers who were inconvenienced. They bought something and it didn't meet their expectations, didn't do what they thought it would, didn't fit. Those are unhappy customers in all of those packages. On the right, the picture shows a little bit of a variation of the pallets now being cleaned up a little bit, sorted a little bit, but you can still see that in the returns world, suitcases could be on a pallet with an Xbox or a television or clothing or shoes. It's all thrown together because the reverse logistics world is the dark side. It's where things go to die. And we try to do something about that. Returns in 2021 were estimated in North America 16.6% of sales. E-commerce used to be about 10 to 12%, and now it jumped to easily to the 18 to 20% range. Now, some countries are variant, like Great Britain, e-commerce is even larger than 20%. And in other countries, it's a bit lower, where the retail community is still strong and people are shopping. Retailers have, the merchandise purchased online is returned, of course, way more than the brick and mortar stores. But e-tailers, the online store sellers, have recognized that they need an advantage over the brick and mortar. Brick and mortar, you went in, you tried it on, you bought it, or you didn't buy it. But the e-commerce, if you want to be attracting those people, you have to use a free returns program to get people to buy online. Otherwise, they're going to go in the store. So the returns online programs of being free and being relatively easy to do have become a competitive sledgehammer that they use to say, you don't need to go into the store, we'll take care of you. And that's the returns mentality. And it's being used as leverage. Now, there are exceptions. We're going to talk about what Zara and what some others are starting to do, but the brick and mortar stores now have turned back to steal back some of the business from online because they have brick and mortar. So now some of the retailers of the world, including the Zaras and the Carrefours and the John Dixons and Tesco's and other retailers around the world, are starting to say, no, buy it online from us, which is called BOPUS. Buy it online, pick it up in the store. You'll get to see it and touch it. And if there's anything wrong, we can save you some inconvenience then. Or we now have Boris. Buy it online, return it in the store. Again, brick and mortar stores, where they have thousands of locations, have an opportunity to make it easier for the consumer to give them multiple ways to handle the returns, including the drop off. The drop off brick and mortar also means that the retailer can try to take care of you a little bit better and ask you what went wrong. Did you not get what you expected? Is it something else you needed? They can ask questions and they can save the sale. E-commerce, people buy multiples, so they're not able to save the sale. If you buy, and we'll get to this on the next page about the clothing, but expenses. We're estimating that expenses now represent 7 to 11% of the cost of goods sold to handle returns. Now let's be specific about the apparel industry because that is the nightmare. It's a nightmare for two reasons. There's return issues, but also what happens with clothing afterwards is not good for the planet Earth. So return issues here include, as I mentioned, the bracketing. Imagine that you don't know the size, if the shirt, sweater, blouse, slacks will fit you or not. So you think, well, I'm a size 10. I'll order an 11 and a 12 and a 9 and an 8, or maybe just one and above. Shoes, you'll order the size feet that you think you have, and you'll order above or below. And you might even try ordering it in different colors because you're not sure which color will look best. So by saying that, I'm telling you that the return rates are easily north of now 40 to 50%. Now, some retailers are getting smarter about it, but the other issues are, for example, if you use a model, as I show you on this slide, to demonstrate your clothing and how it fits on people, then you send it to somebody and they put it on, they stand in front of a mirror. If they don't look like one of these models, they're more likely to return it. And that is also being proven by social media research. So now we come back to the real core, which is the two-dimensional shopping experience is not the same as three-dimensional. You're looking at me, I'm wearing a blue shirt, but you can't tell if I'm tall, if I'm short, if I'm heavy, if I'm slim. So it's a two-dimensional experience that we're doing right now. And it's important to try to do these and educate ourselves. But when you're shopping, you want that two-dimensional experience to arrive at your door and match your expectations. So size variations, of course, around the world. I happen to wear a large shirt. When I go to Singapore, I started with a large. I go to XL 1, 2, and 3, and 4 to find one that fits because in Singapore, their idea of an XL and a large is completely different than in the United States or in Europe, perhaps. Then, of course, seasonal returns. The late afternoons, late seasonal snowstorms, cold weather can just result in people buying snow boots, heavy clothes, and then suddenly the sun comes out, it's spring, and they're like, I only bought this last month, I'm going to send it back. Those are the seasonal returns. So those are the issues. There are solutions. There's upcycling for clothing that's returned, because if you're not aware, clothing is the product category that is the most filling up of landfills outside of food and waste. But the product category of clothing is going into landfills more than anything else. And it's in volume, taking up a lot of our landfills. So upcycling is an opportunity for clothing to be shredded and redone into new fibers, to be remanufactured into new clothing. That's upcycling. The pre-loved, the consignment shops, the luxury pre-owned sites are starting to take off. That's great. Nike, Adidas, Columbia, REI, clothing manufacturers like Eileen Fisher and others are offering exchange programs. Send back your old clothing, we'll give you a small credit and allow you to buy a new one. And then there's serial number and RFID tag tracking. The real opportunity of what this slide shows is that there are solutions coming every day to what do we do with this stuff. Now, I want to stress from my view in the world, these are all after the sale solutions. I think we need more before the sale solutions, and they're a ways off. They're starting to work on sizing. You can have an avatar on your website when you're doing shopping, and the avatar looks like you, size like you, weighs like you, and allows you to see what the clothing might look like actually on you. So when you get it home, your expectations are met. Now, this is the apparel industry, and I focus on it because there's a lot of volume of returned items, and clothing doesn't age well. It goes back and it's generally liquidated and not resold and not reused in the volumes that are out there. So let's talk about another industry for a moment, and that would be the major appliance delivery. When you think about appliances, you can begin to imagine a nightmare of a refrigerator that's delivered and doesn't work right and is returned. Once these things are out of the box, it's a nightmare. So there are solutions now around the world in home deliveries. They're learning to call ahead to make sure that the boxes will fit through the doors. They're doing text and auto calls because the worst nightmare, of course, about a delivery is it comes before or after you're expecting it. And you take time off from work. So the best practices now here are to make sure that it's there at the right time. It's been pre-measured. It's going to fit. And finally, if the delivery people make a slight error, slight misstep, and there's a slight dent or damage to the product that's made, the call center agents, they're instructed to call, the delivery men are instructed to call for you. It's for your benefit on your behalf, and call in and say, let's take a look and see, take a picture. How about if we offer you a credit for slight damage? Should we give you a certain amount of euro credits? Um, and if it's not exactly the right color you were expecting, and so on, because it costs hundreds of dollars, hundreds of euros to take these goods back and liquidate them in a warehouse without a box. It's just impossible. And again, the genie is out of the bottle. When a major appliance is delivered, it's the box, it never goes back in the box. Or think about mattress in a box. Imagine the foam mattress that's been under 2,000 pounds of pressure and pops open in your home, and you lay on it and you say, oh, that's not going to work at all, and you have a return guarantee. Imagine the process of taking that away. So a lot of opportunities here for improvement. So what will the next 5 years look like? Well, e-commerce is going to grow. Will it ever replace brick and mortar? Of course not. But as it grows to that 20 to 25 to 30% of all retail business, and the return rates are much higher, imagine a teeter-totter, a seesaw, because as the returns go up in the e-commerce and the e-commerce sales go up, you're going to have a collapse of the system being able to handle this. So unfortunately, retailers are now driven to take care of the customer first. And the simplest definition is take the return. Take the return and just do something for that customer. Make it hassle-free, cross-channel, cross-border, and so on. And that is a major issue, of course, in Europe, where you have 27 plus countries in the space of half of the United States. And all these countries have different rules and regulations. So taking a couch that comes out of Germany, Wayfair, that goes to Italy, taking it back, or taking it back from France is a nightmare. And the manufacturers now are limiting their returns, their reliability. In the past years, when I worked, for example, at Philips and Sony, we took everything back from the retailer. The retailer wasn't responsible, they didn't make it. But the OEMs now are trying to say, I'll give you an allowance, you take care of it, you make it go away. This is called passing the buck. This is called making your own carbon footprint lower as a manufacturer because you don't take things back, you give allowances. The regulations are becoming more onerous, or, depending on your point of view, more important. In Europe, there's the beginning of things like the French Repairability Index, the German Responsibility Act that says the manufacturers have to provide solutions for these things. So we're looking at that change coming in the next few years. Expenses will continue to grow, but the good news is here, and again, there's a lot of good news in this, consumers are are more interested in buying secondary market goods now, especially millennials. They go to the Goodwill stores, they go to the thrift shops, they go to the secondary retailers, and they're buying these goods because number one, it's a value, it's a deal. And number two, they're turning it into kind of a chic experience of going to shop for these, you know, Louis Vuitton bags and Donna Karan clothing and Calvin Klein outfits at these thrift shops where they can get a great value. So that's exciting. And it applies to many products. People are fine buying a 1 or 2 year old television set, and that's been turned in. So that's a good growth in the secondary market. In fact, that's the only growth. In addition, the brick and mortar stores are learning how to fight. We mentioned the omni-channel concept. They'll let you buy it online. They'll try to get you to bring it back to the store if there's a problem. They'll try to get you to pick it up at the store so you can touch it before you have it. So the next 5 years are encouraging and distressing at the same time. And if you really care about the planet Earth, you recognize that there's a circular economy going on. The sustainability efforts are being recognized by consumers. They got mad when H&M it was discovered that H&M had burned millions of articles of clothing in Europe, and they called it energy recovery. And the backlash on that was very strong. Brands recognized that they have to be environmentally friendly. They have to be showing that they're doing good work because the consumers are paying attention to that, and so is the government. And again, that secondary market is going to continue to grow for resale and reuse and create new parts of the economy that, again, this stuff used to be thrown away. So it's very exciting to me to have the overview of how it's growing, it's getting out of control, but there's other technologies and ideas and steps to make a difference. And that's what the circular economy can be all about. When we start at the beginning to design these goods and design the products and begin to sell them to consumer, let's think about what we're going to do when it comes back and when it's in reverse. That's a lot of the story about the e-commerce hangover and the returns in the reverse logistics industry. Thank you very much for listening.